Have you ever wondered why being kind often leads to being overlooked, used, or even disrespected? You give your heart, your patience, your best intentions, and in return, people walk all over you. They take advantage of your silence. They interpret your forgiveness as weakness. You try to keep the peace, but inside you feel the storm of resentment growing louder with every betrayal. You're not alone. So many people carry this quiet frustration, the ache of giving too much in a world that seems to reward cruelty, not compassion. At some point, you begin to question everything. You ask yourself, am I being kind or am I just afraid to stand up for myself? Am I avoiding conflict or am I avoiding power? It's a painful realization, but it's also a turning point. Because deep down, you know something must change. You can't keep living at the mercy of people who confuse your gentleness for surrender. There comes a moment when kindness fails, and when it does, you're left with a choice. Stay broken or evolve. This isn't about becoming heartless. It's about becoming sharp, becoming someone who knows when to give and when to guard. Because if your kindness is costing you your dignity, it's no longer kindness, it's self-destruction. And you weren't born to be broken. You were born to rise, to protect your peace, to become someone others think twice about crossing. That transformation starts with understanding one powerful truth. Kindness alone is not enough. You've been trained to believe that being nice is a virtue, that if you give more, tolerate more, and shrink yourself enough, eventually the world will notice your goodness and treat you right. But that day never comes. Instead, you're left wondering why people respect those who are colder, more ruthless, more distant. It's not because they're better. It's because they've drawn a line, and the world sees it. That line is power. And now it's time you drew your own. What if your real strength isn't in your ability to endure, but in your courage to change? What if the world doesn't need more nice people? It needs more powerful ones. People who are kind by choice, but fierce by necessity. People who know when to be soft and when to be unbreakable. That's not cruelty, that's survival. And the moment you understand this, you stop living to be liked and start living to be respected. Stay with this message, because by the end of this, you will understand something most people never will, that when kindness fails, there is a law, an ancient one, that can protect you, empower you, and finally give you back your voice. It's not for the faint-hearted, but you're not here to stay small. You're here to become someone who cannot be ignored. And once you learn how to use this law, they won't just stop using you. They'll start fearing the day they ever did. The harsh truth is this: the world doesn't respect what it doesn't fear, and no one fears kindness. They admire it. They might even appreciate it in moments, but deep down, they do not fear it. And if they don't fear you, they will eventually test you. They will push your limits, take advantage of your silence, and see just how far you'll bend before you finally break. This is not because they are evil. It's because people, by nature, respect force. They understand boundaries only when there are consequences. You've seen it happen. The loudest voices get the attention. The boldest ones get the power. The unapologetic get the respect. Meanwhile, the kind suffer in quiet confusion, wondering why their love, their effort, and their loyalty don't earn them the same value. It's not fair, but it's real. Because in the eyes of the world, kindness without strength looks like weakness. And weakness invites predators. It invites doubt. It invites doubt. It invites disrespect. That's why the people who are respected most are never just kind. They are strong. And their strength is what gives their kindness weight. You've tried to be good. You've tried to do the right thing, but how many times have you silenced yourself just to keep others comfortable? How many times have you given chances that only led to more betrayal? How many nights have you stayed awake, replaying what you should have said, what you should have done? If only you weren't so afraid of confrontation. That fear is the real enemy, and it's time you killed it. You are not here to live your life on your knees. You are not here to be a footnote in someone else's story. You are here to rise. And rising means you stop apologizing for protecting yourself. It means you stop explaining your value and start enforcing it. You don't need to yell. You don't need to threaten. You simply need to be willing to lose people who don't respect you. Because the second you become willing to walk away, you become powerful. And power changes everything. When you stop begging for respect and start demanding it through your presence, people change how they treat you. Not because you've become cruel, but because you've become clear. Clear about what you allow. clear about what you tolerate. Clear you are. So. And clarity is more intimidating than anger ever will be. The strongest people you'll ever meet are the ones who learn to set fire to their need to be liked, and in doing so, became unstoppable. Let go of the lie that being kind means being passive. Let go of the guilt that kept you small. There is nothing noble about being used. There is nothing holy about letting others walk over you. Kindness is beautiful, but without strength, it's fragile, and you were never meant to be fragile. You were meant to be kind and unshakable, respected, feared by the ones who thought they could break you. Because from now on, they don't get to. Most people will never understand what it takes to survive in a world that feeds on illusion. They'll keep living in the fantasy that goodness alone can protect them. But deep down, you know better. You've seen how people move when they think you won't fight back. You've felt the sting of betrayal from those you once defended. You've learned that smiles lie, that loyalty fades, and that silence is mistaken for weakness. That knowledge hurts, but it's also your greatest advantage. Because once you stop expecting the world to be fair, you start preparing yourself to be powerful. There's a different path. Not for the naive, but for the brave. It's a path built on clarity, strategy, and unshakable self-respect. And the first step is understanding that cruelty, when necessary, is not evil. It's intelligent, it's deliberate, it's controlled. It's the edge that keeps you from being consumed. When kindness no longer works, necessary cruelty becomes your armor. Not the kind that lashes out in anger, but the kind that ends cycles, closes doors, and sends a silent, irreversible message. You will never cross me again. This is what Machiavelli understood, that in the real world, mercy without consequence breeds contempt. That people must feel a boundary to respect it, and when that boundary is crossed, your response must be final, cold, clean, without apology. Not to destroy, but to correct, to reset the balance. Because power isn't about domination, it's about control. Control of yourself, control of your energy, and control of what you allow into your life. Anything less, and you give others permission to shape your fate for you. You don't need to be cruel often, but when you are, it must leave no doubt. It must be so calm, so confident, so direct that the message echoes long after you walk away. That's when people change. That's when they remember. That's when they realize your kindness was never a weakness. It was a gift, and they lost it. That is the art of necessary cruelty. It is not rage. It is not chaos. It is control sharpened to a blade, used only when the soul demands it. When you understand this, you no longer waste time proving yourself to those who don't value you. You no longer try to fix what disrespects you. You withdraw, you move in silence, you protect your energy like it's sacred, because it is, and no one has the right to drain it without cost. This is how you reclaim your power. This is how you stop being prey and start becoming the storm people prey never turns their way. If they can't respect your kindness, let them fear your boundaries. Let them feel the weight of your absence. Let them know that once your peace is threatened, you don't argue, you act. Because you weren't put here to be walked on. You were put here to rise above, to be kind, to be fair. But when pushed too far, to become untouchable. That's what makes you powerful. That's what makes you free. Cruelty is not about hate. It's about clarity. It's about making decisions that protect your value when no one else will. There will come moments in your life when silence is no longer strength, when turning the other cheek only invites another slap. And in those moments, you must choose to become something different. Not louder, not vengeful, just final. You must become the version of yourself that stops entertaining pain disguised as love, disrespect hidden beneath smiles, and obligations that drain your soul. That version of you doesn't seek revenge. That version seeks peace and is willing to do whatever it takes to keep it. There is power in restraint, but there is also power in precision. The ability to see clearly who adds to your life and who subtracts. The strength to speak less and enforce more. And the wisdom to understand that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to let go without explanation. Because not everyone deserves access to your heart. Not everyone earns a second chance. Some people only learn when the door closes and never opens again. There is a myth that strength means being constantly forgiving, endlessly patient, always available. But strength also looks like distance. Like a calm refusal, like walking away with no warning and no regret. That isn't cruelty born of ego. It's cruelty born of self-preservation. It's the hard line that says, I gave you my light and you tried to dim it. Never again. That's when the shift happens. When you stop needing others to validate your worth and start moving as if you already know it, because you do. When you operate from this mindset, everything changes. Your energy shifts. Your posture changes. You no longer chase. You no longer beg. You no longer explain. You observe, you decide, and you move. And in that movement, there is quiet power, the kind that cannot be faked, the kind that cannot be questioned, the kind that builds kingdoms from discipline, not approval. You are no longer led by emotion. You are guided by principle. You do not react, you respond. And your response is measured, calm, decisive. This is the law of necessary cruelty, not constant aggression, not blind retaliation, but the rare, intentional decision to end something before it ends you. A line that once crossed changes everything. Not to prove a point, but to protect your peace. Because your peace is sacred. Your mind is sacred. Your time, your space, your energy. None of it is cheap. And anyone who treats it like it is must learn through consequence that the version of you who tolerated it is gone. Replaced by someone who now understands that kindness without protection becomes poison. So protect yourself. With calm, with silence, with unapologetic certainty. And let the world adjust. Let them feel the shift. Let them remember who you were before you knew your worth, because who you are now doesn't beg, doesn't bend, and never forgets the power of being underestimated once. Respect is not given freely. It is taken, claimed, and enforced by those who refuse to be dismissed. The world doesn't reward how much you care. It rewards how much you command. And that command doesn't come from noise. It comes from energy, an unshakable presence that speaks before you do. A presence built through self-respect, unbreakable standards, and the willingness to be misunderstood by those who only value access, not depth. The moment you stop negotiating your worth, the world begins to respond differently. People sense it, they feel it, and they adjust because power has a language that needs no translation. You do not need to be cruel often to be powerful, but you must be capable of it. You must have it in your arsenal, not to destroy others, but to defend yourself. Most people live in fear of conflict. They run from tension. They fold under pressure. But the ones who rise, the ones who lead, the ones who command the room, they are not afraid to enforce boundaries that sting. They know that without consequence, there is no respect, and without respect, there is no peace. That is why necessary cruelty is not just a tool, it's a form of discipline. When you look someone in the eyes and make it clear that you will not tolerate being disrespected, something shifts in them. It forces a recalibration. It forces them to confront the line they were about to cross and what it will cost. That moment is everything. That moment creates separation between the ones who are taken seriously and the ones who are walked over. You decide which one you are, not by what you say, but by what you allow. Your strength is not proven through aggression. It is proven through restraint until restraint no longer serves you. That is the balance. You give people grace until they show you why they never deserved it. You offer peace until they weaponize your silence. And then with complete stillness, you close the door. No argument, no explanation, just absence. That absence is louder than rage. It echoes in the minds of those who thought you'd never leave, never change, never harden. But you did. And now they feel the cold truth they lost access to someone who once would have given everything. That is the cost of betrayal. That is the price of disrespect. You don't need to seek revenge. The weight of your absence will teach them everything. And the power you gain from reclaiming yourself will become the lesson. You are not here to constantly explain why you matter. You are here to embody it. Through every boundary, every refusal, every step away from anything that drains your fire. And that fire will not be dimmed again, not for comfort, not for approval, not for anyone. You don't need to be feared by everyone, only by the ones who once mistook your kindness for permission. They know now, and they will never make that mistake again. There comes a moment when silence becomes your greatest weapon, not because you have nothing to say, but because you've outgrown the need to say it. You no longer justify your boundaries. You no longer explain your decisions. You let your energy speak for you, and it speaks volumes. People begin to feel the difference before they understand it. They sense the shift in you, the absence of desperation, the presence of control. That's when your power becomes undeniable. Because true power doesn't beg, it doesn't chase, it doesn't seek permission. It stands still and watches everything else move around it. When you stop reacting, you start controlling. Control isn't about domination, it's about direction. It's about deciding who gets access to your mind, your time, your spirit. It's about being intentional with your presence because your presence is a currency and you only spend it where it brings return. You don't waste it on arguments. You don't waste it on explanations. You don't waste it on people who only hear what benefits them. Your clarity offends them, but that's not your problem. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to your growth, your peace, your standard. Not everyone is meant to walk with you. Some are only meant to test you, to teach you the cost of softness without structure. To show you what happens when you love without limits, give without pause, and stay when your soul is begging you to leave. But you've learned, and now every decision you make comes from strength. You've felt what it's like to be drained, overlooked, disrespected, and you've decided you'll never feel that again. That is not anger. That is evolution. Your power lies in your ability to enforce a new reality, one where your presence is earned, not assumed. One where access to your kindness comes with terms. One where people must show you, not just tell you, that they value who you are. And when they fail to do so, you withdraw. Not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom. You don't stay to be understood. You don't linger to be convinced. You walk away because peace costs more than company, and your peace is non-negotiable. Let others gossip. Let them guess. Let them wonder why you changed. You owe them nothing. Growth requires silence. Strength requires solitude. And clarity requires distance. Well, you're not the same person who tolerated everything to keep everyone happy. You've learned that not all conflict is bad. Some conflict is necessary. Some silence is the boundary. And some exits are the lesson they were never ready for. Your new standard is peace with power, grace with grit, kindness with limits, and anyone who can't handle that version of you was only ever meant to meet the old one. You're not here to be liked, you're here to be respected. And if they can't offer that, they can watch you leave, without noise, without guilt, without looking back. Because now, you know who you are, and that changes everything. When you stop bending, the world starts noticing. Not because you've become loud, but because you've become rooted, unshakable, grounded in a truth that doesn't waver under pressure. That truth is simple. Your worth is not up for debate. You don't have to explain yourself to people who benefit from your confusion. You don't have to stay small to keep the peace. Real peace requires power, and power begins the moment you choose yourself without apology. It begins when you stop being afraid of disappointing others and start being afraid of betraying yourself. You've been taught to be humble, to be agreeable, to accommodate. But they never taught you the cost of shrinking for too long. They never warned you that self-abandonment feels like safety until it becomes suffocation. You wake up one day and don't recognize who you've become. You don't speak your truth. You don't protect your space. You say yes when your whole body screams no. That's not kindness. That's erasure. And the world does not mourn what you erase. It simply moves on until you either disappear or decide to return to yourself. Returning means remembering. Remembering that you were never meant to please everyone. Remembering that love isn't real if it requires your silence. Remembering that the ones who truly see you will never ask you to betray your own voice to earn their presence. You don't need to explain your transformation. Growth is uncomfortable not just for you, but for those who preferred the version of you that needed them. But you've outgrown that need. You've outgrown the fear of being misunderstood. Because now you understand yourself. That's more than enough. Necessary cruelty is not about being harsh. It's about being honest. It's about cutting ties that choke you, about setting standards that protect you, about refusing to apologize for the space you take up. When you embody this, people learn quickly. The old version of you is gone, the one who tolerated the disrespect. The one who accepted the bare minimum, the one who lowered the volume of their truth just to stay in someone else's life. That version is buried. And from that grave rises someone who will never again beg for what they can create on their own: peace, power, presence. Your strength is no longer reactive. It's proactive. It doesn't wait to be pushed. It moves with purpose. It draws the line before it's crossed. It doesn't tremble in conflict. It stands tall and watches the weak fall away. Let them. Let everything that cannot handle your boundaries collapse under their own weight. Because your life is not a democracy, it's a kingdom. And in this kingdom, your soul is sovereign. You don't owe anyone comfort at the expense of your clarity. You don't owe the past another chance to repeat itself. From now on, you lead, you protect, you command, and you do it all with quiet power. Because when you finally know your worth, the world does too, and no one dares forget it again. Power is not something you ask for. It's something you step into the moment you stop waiting for permission. The world doesn't grant it to you. People don't hand it over out of kindness. It appears when you no longer tolerate being overlooked, underestimated, or silenced. When you stop adjusting yourself to be more acceptable, more convenient, more liked. That's when something shifts deep within you. A quiet rebellion. A declaration that you are no longer available for anything that insults your spirit or wastes your energy. That shift is not loud. It's absolute. You don't have to convince anyone of your value. You only have to believe it so fully that no one can afford to forget it. Right? The moment you stop seeking validation, you become dangerous because now your decisions are not made from insecurity but from clarity. You walk into rooms differently. You speak with weight, not volume. You no longer reach for approval. You carry presence. And that presence draws a line the moment you enter. People feel it before they understand it. They hesitate before crossing you, not because you are cruel, but because you are certain. Certainty is rare. That's why it's powerful. Most people are unsure of themselves, constantly shape-shifting to fit into places they've outgrown. But not you. Not anymore. You've paid the price for softness without limits. You've endured the ache of being too available, too forgiving, too silent. And now, your silence has evolved. It no longer hides your pain, it protects your peace. That's what makes it unshakable. It is no longer silence of submission, it is silence of control. You're not heartless, you're focused, you're not bitter, you're awake. And what once felt like cruelty now feels like freedom. Because being kind to yourself means being hard on anything that threatens your stability. The world doesn't need your endless yes, it needs your fearless no. It needs your ability to walk away without warning, without guilt, without explanation. Because when someone crosses your line once, it's a mistake. When they do it again, it's a choice. And your response must be final. That's how you teach them. Not through anger, but through absence. People only learn from consequences. Not words, not warnings, but distance. Your presence is a privilege. Let them feel what it's like to lose it. Let them sit in the silence they created. Let them remember how it felt to have access to you. And to know they won't get it again. This is how power is reclaimed. Not through noise, but through separation. Through standard. Through mastery of emotion. You are no longer driven by the need to be chosen. You've chosen yourself, and that choice is permanent. You do not return to what cost you your peace. You do not entertain what tried to dim your fire. You are not for everyone, and that's the point. Because the more you respect your energy, the more the world learns to do the same. And those who can't, they're no longer your problem. They're your past. This is the version of you they didn't expect. The version that no longer explains, no longer justifies, no longer asks for less pain in exchange for more patience. The one who understands that peace is not given, it's taken back, one boundary at a time. Because everything changes the moment you decide that your energy is sacred, not shared freely, not wasted on the ungrateful, not sacrificed just to avoid conflict. Now you move differently. You choose who gets your time. You choose who earns your softness. And most importantly, you choose yourself without flinching. You're not cold. You're clear. And clarity will always be misinterpreted by those who once benefited from your confusion. They'll call you harsh for having standards, arrogant for choosing distance, unkind for no longer tolerating their chaos. Let them speak. Let them distort. Because none of that matters. What matters is that you've remembered who you are. What matters is that your silence is no longer a prison, it's a filter. It removes the noise, the fakes, the users, and what's left is only truth. When you elevate your standards, you reduce your circle. That's not a loss, that's alignment. Not everyone can walk the path of discipline. Not everyone will understand why you stopped reaching out, why you stopped making space for disrespect, why you stopped lowering your frequency to accommodate theirs. But you're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to build a life so aligned with your power that only those who truly see you are allowed near. That's not cruelty. That's self-respect. Every time you draw a boundary, you teach the world how to treat you. Every time you say no, you protect the future you're building. Every time you walk away from what no longer serves you, you create space for what will. That's the discipline. That's the law. And it isn't soft. It isn't nice. It's strong because it has to be. The world doesn't respect wishful thinking. It respects action, consequence, finality. And when you enforce that, everything begins to shift. You no longer live for comfort. You live for clarity. You no longer tolerate confusion disguised as love. You want peace, not performance, depth, not distraction, loyalty, not loud words with no follow-through. And if that means being alone for a while, so be it. Solitude isn't emptiness, it's refinement. It's the forge where the strongest version of you is created. Not through noise, but through stillness. Not through acceptance, but through discipline. Let them misunderstand you. Let them call your standards cruelty. Because if they can't handle your boundaries, they were never ready for your truth. And you owe the world your truth, not your silence, not your suffering, not your compromise, just your clarity, just your strength, just your unshakable refusal to be less than you are ever again. This is how power is reclaimed. This is how peace is earned. And this is how the real you finally rises, untouchable, unstoppable, and unforgettable.